right, everyone, welcome back to, unfortunately, the last episode of Season 1. I know, it's gone quick, 12 weeks, and Pastor Leah, you're back for more.
Yeah, look at that.
It's awesome, and I know we're excited about what we're going to talk about today, because obviously it's summertime still, and so we're soaking up the sun and just enjoying what the summer season brings. And I think, as a church, we're really using this summer for devotion, right?
Yes.
That's our sermon series, A Heart After God, and really having a summer of devotion together as a church, but also as individuals. And I think that's so cool because summer can oftentimes, at least in my experience, be kind of that limbo in-between stage, right? You're in between school years. You're in between, you're kind of just enjoying the summer and kind of putting things on pause, right? Or maybe things naturally just stop for you or slow down for you or speed up for you. It kind of feels like that anomaly, right? Compared to the rest of the year. And so I think oftentimes we get kind of in this rhythm of summer just being kind of that limbo phase and not really diving in and continuing to do the things that we set out to do throughout the year. And so today, as kind of the wrap-up of Season 1, we're going to really be talking about what does it look like to be content and devoted in all seasons, right? And that a lot comes into that, and we're going to unpack a little bit of it. But really, what does contentment look like, and really, why should we be content?
Yeah, I think first off, when we talk about contentment, a lot of times we talk about it in ways of like material possessions, like being satisfied with the things that we own or the things that we have. I think that carries over, though, into what you were saying about seasons, because for me, I guess the opposite of contentment is like this drive to always want more.
Yeah.
And so whether that's more fun maybe in the summer, more advancement for things, whatever it is, I think that's like the opposite of contentment.
Yeah.
And there's a natural drive, I think, put within us to want more. I think that there's like a healthy part of that. Looking towards the future, obviously we have that blessed hope of heaven as like the very far finish line that we're going towards, and so there's nothing wrong with kind of being excited about what's ahead, but when our excitement and our drive for what comes next robs us of what we have in the present, that's where we need to kind of look at things.
Yeah, for sure. And I think even just wanting to go to the next thing, right? Like so often I look back in seasons of my life and I did not enjoy them because I was so fixated and so worried about the next season, right? And sometimes it's worry, sometimes it's just excitement. And those things are okay, right? Like those are realities of just the cyclical nature of life, like the seasons and seasons of life and looking ahead to what's next. There is some reality to that, but I so wish I could go back to those seasons and really enjoy them and be present in them and not just be trying to hurry along and get to the next season of life, right? And so I think contentment is so much, like you said, so much bigger than just physical, the materialism type things that we often think of. It is just in life in general, like anything we have, whether it's physical or not, right? And so how can we be content, but still not just like contentment? We don't want to just like sit back and allow life to just happen.
Not
right?
laziness.
Yeah,
right?
laziness. Because I think sometimes it's that ambition in us that's driving us to want more and to try to achieve more. And there's healthy aspects of ambition, right, in the right ways to accomplish things for God. And so how can we be content but also ambitious in the right ways?
I think one of the first easy steps is gratitude. I think contentment really is connected to gratitude. And when we are thankful for what we have, when we can pause, recognize, there's that really old song like Count Your Blessings or whatever. But there's something about stopping and recognizing, the good things in the season where you're at, the good things and what you have, and being thankful for them on a regular basis that just like reconditions our minds and our heart to be content and be thankful to God for what he's provided in that season. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think really just holding everything loosely too, right? And I think that comes from a heart of gratitude, right? That this is all from God, recognizing that, we talk about that with our finances, right? That we give, the tithe. That comes from an idea of it's all God's anyways, right? Like, I'm the one that goes to work every day, but I wouldn't have a job without God. I wouldn't be able to do this job if it weren't for God, right? He is the provider of all things. And so that's true of our finances. That's true of everything in our life,
our
material or not. Yeah.
We're stewards.
Stewards, that's the exact word for it, right? So I think just holding everything loosely and not owning anything, which ownership is the opposite of stewardship. Right. And so choosing the steward mindset versus the owner mindset really allows us to be grateful for everything we have and continue to work at it, for the Lord.
Yeah.
But then also be content knowing that what I have now is a gift from God, and I'm going to continue to steward it, which in turn is going to bring, growth, and seasons are going to change, and all those things are going to happen.
Yeah.
But it all exists together through stewardship. So I love that you brought that up.
And that's a trust thing.
Totally.
We're trusting that God will continue to provide for us.
Yeah.
We're trusting that He sees the big picture when we don't, and that He doesn't do things just like a whim and a fancy. Like, He has purpose for us and in our lives. And so I can trust that when I'm in a season that maybe is not my favorite season, I can trust that if God has me there, that He has purpose in that. And I want to learn the full lesson that He has for me in that season instead of just trying to like rush through it. Because, the older I get, and I'm sure you've even seen, like, there's a consequence of rushing past a lesson instead of learning it well the first time.
Totally.
Right? And so if we can sit for a minute and trust that He has a good lesson for us in this place, in this moment, and do our best to honor Him in that and learn, then I've just seen how when He takes me to the next thing, it's just is so much more smooth.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Just allowing Him to be in control, I think, and that trust really is trusting God and not trusting ourselves to be the control, right? And, so often it's like, no, God, I got this. Like, I'm going to do it on my own. And sometimes it's like, that's going to be obviously wrong from the get-go. And sometimes it's like, it seems like it's going well, and then all of a sudden it's like, wow, I've just wasted all of that time because God had something way better in store, and He does things way better than we could ever do in our own strength. So trusting God, letting Him be in control. And I think really just slowing down too, right? Like, there is just an element of human nature that just wants to speed through things. I don't exactly know, I think that's a bigger subject, right? That we could probably unpack a lot of things that push us to speed through life. But let's kind of unpack some of the things. Like, what comes to mind? Like, why do you think we as humans tend to naturally want to speed through things?
Oh, that's such a great question.
Yeah.
I'm not even entirely sure, but I think it's hardwired in us early, because I think first thing that comes to mind is like a little kid when you ask them how old they are and they tell you and a half. Yes. Right? They're always trying to speed ahead to the next birthday. Or it's like, my birthday's coming, and you're like, oh, that's awesome. Like, when is it? And they're like, May. And you're like, we're in July. Like, you just had your birthday.
Totally. Yeah, that was me growing up for sure. I'm very future-minded, like very futuristic. And I always have been. And so my family will always make fun of me lovingly, because growing up, I would finish my birthday. And it was like the sun wouldn't even set on my birthday, and I would be planning my next birthday because it's just we're planners and we're future thinkers, and I think that is intentional, right? Like, there is aspects of that God made intentionally in us, and certain ones of us have it to different degrees and in different ways. But I think there is a natural, tendency to do that can be good. But then it's when we just run with that, right? And we don't enjoy where God has us right now.
So I think there's two sides to it. There's the fun, lighthearted excitement part for what's next. And then, like, the negative side of that is that can become like a grass is greener kind of syndrome.
Totally.
And it's uncomfortable. Where we're at is uncomfortable, or there's an element of pain or suffering or discontent with where we are. And I think sometimes our rush to move to the next season is a sad attempt to get ourselves out of something that is uncomfortable or we don't like in the moment.
That is such a good point. Yeah, because I think, I never think ahead to things, and I'm like thinking of all the maybe the mundane aspects of that season or that moment that I'm thinking of. I'm not thinking of all the ways that, personally, I'm not thinking of all the ways that could go wrong. Maybe that's somebody's struggle, right? But we're thinking of it often in the ways of like the highlight reel of like, I'm going to step into the season and it's going to be sunshine and rainbows. And there's not going to be a boring day in this season. There's not going to be a day where I feel like I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. There's not going to be doubt. There's not going to be anything wrong. It's going to be beautiful and everything I dreamed it would be. Yeah. But that's never the case, right? Like, no. That's never how the season ends up. And so, I love that there's quotes and whatever, like you walk into Hobby Lobby and there's like all these things that say, like I'm living in the prayers that I prayed in the past.
Yeah.
And that is, it's maybe cliche now, but it's so true, right? Is. Like I am right now living in prayers that I prayed for a long time previous to today.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I get it, and then now it's like, well, but I'm praying things right now that I'm not living in. It's like, well, take a chill pill, girl. Like, just slow down and enjoy the answers that God has given you for right now, and live through them, because that is true what you said. Like, right now, I could tell you all the ways that my life is mundane, all the ways that my life is hard, all the, challenges that I'm walking through. And of course, my human nature wants to just run from those things and get through it, right? But God doesn't do anything by accident or without purpose, right? So he's going to use everything in our lives to teach us and to train us and to shape us. And so if I try to just rush through it, I'm going to miss all of those things, right?
And I think it just all circles back to like kind of that desire to be in control.
Yeah.
I mean, even with a little kid wanting to be older, I feel like there's a sense of like, when I'm older, then I can do what I want. You know, if I'm in this other job, maybe I would be in charge and I could do what I want. If I had more money, I could do what I want. And so I feel like a lot of times our desire to like move ahead is linked to our desire to control things. And yet in true biblical fashion, we see like that's not the way that the kingdom works, right? It's like the more you try to hold on, the more you lose, and the more you let go and let God take control of it, that's when you're really flourishing. And
absolutely,
we look at that famous passage about not being anxious, right? You're worried about, your food and your clothes, and God clothes the flowers and all those things like that. Don't worry about today, or don't worry tomorrow, because today has enough stuff going on. But that's the thing, is like when you're trying so hard to control all of those aspects, you can't have peace.
Yeah. You can't enjoy what you're sitting in, like I'm not going to enjoy today if I'm worried about tomorrow, right? And so, I think that's so good. And as we kind of grow, I think what we're supposed to do as Christ followers is actually depend on him more, right? But that's very opposite of what we do in life, right? Like we're grasping in life to climb the ladder, so to speak, to gain more control and more independence, right? That's what the world, proclaims as the way to live our lives, right? To continue to be independent and continue to gain more power and gain more control. But really, as Christ followers, what we're called to and what is for our best interest is to actually lose that control more and more, to let go more and more, to allow God to be everything in our lives, right? And so that actually looks like becoming more dependent on God, not on ourselves. So that's awesome. So we know that seasons change, right? There's always things changing about what life looks like for any given moment. And so in that, I think it's important that we also remember that God does not change, right? Seasons change, but God does not. So how do we kind of, with that in mind, remain devoted to God in all seasons as the seasons change?
I think we just have to always remember that he's our constant. Like everything else is going to change, but he doesn't change.
Yeah.
And I think as people, a lot of times we make the mistake of trying to attach to different people as our constants in different seasons.
Yeah.
And they're just going to fail because as humans we do, but he doesn't change, and we can attach ourselves to him, and that should be our constant through our entire life.
And just allowing that pressure to not get displaced, right? Because God is the only one that can handle that pressure, right? Because that's innately who he is. But like you said, we do try to place that constant kind of person or thing in our life on things that change, and that's going to set us up to fail. And I think often we do that, and then we ask God later, like, well, why did you fail me? And it's like, well, because you put your trust and your dependency on the wrong thing. Like, I was there. I wouldn't have changed. I wouldn't have buckled under that pressure. But you didn't put the pressure on me. You put the pressure on a location or a job or a person in your life or relationships or whatever, thing that you expect to always be there to catch you when you fall. So, yeah, I think just that's so good, just putting that pressure on God to be the constant, because he is always there. So,
and then I think just being obedient. Obedience doesn't always feel good. We can know that it's for good, but it doesn't always feel good. And I had a job right out of college. I just needed something quick to start paying back those student loans kind of thing. And so I'm old Amy, and there was an ad in the classifieds, that's where you'd look for jobs back in the day. And so, but I saw like an opening at a daycare. It was like a Christian daycare, and I was like, okay, easy peasy. Like, I can just do this until I find my real job or whatever.
Right.
And I ended up there for like 2 years, and a lot of it I was miserable. But every time I would pray about it, like, I felt like God didn't release me to leave that job. And I mean, it was bad. Like, I would get there early in the morning, and I would sit in my car, and this is kind of embarrassing, but I would sit there and I would read through like these Psalms where David's just like, God, like, why are you letting this happen to me? They're all trying to kill me. And I just was like in David's misery. Yes. And so, but I would like spend this time like reading this word and just praying, and just I was so unhappy there. And there was just other stuff, I had been married for like a year, like we were still adjusting to what that was like. We had moved from our college town to, there was other things, but it was just like a rough season for me. And finally got to the point where I was able to have this like adjustment in my attitude, because I guess that's what contentment really is, this adjustment in my attitude, where I'm just like, okay, God, like, it's clear you want me here, and so I'm just gonna like do my best for you and do it cheerfully. And I kid you not, it was like less than a month after that, like a door opened for someone else. And I think God just had like this lesson for hard-headed Leah about continuing to be devoted and to find contentment in walking in obedience. Because I guess even if the thing isn't fun, like, it's a privilege for us. Like, all the things that God has done for us, like, it's a privilege to follow him. And it should be a joy for us to walk in the path that he's laid out for us. And so sometimes I think we forget that, and I did in that season for sure. And once I kind of was like, okay, I'm gonna do this, there was a peace in my heart that happened, and then my circumstances changed. And I don't think that was coincidental.
I don't think so either. Yeah, I think God, again, it's those lessons that he's trying to teach us through. And he's like, I don't want you to miss this, right? Like, I'm going to keep you here until this lesson, it works out in your life, right? And we never know how long that's going to take, right? It's a process. And it's not even just that one moment, right? Like, that was the one moment that you really clicked in your mind. But God was working that out in you for those 2 years, right? So he was working on you and developing you. And so I think of just so many people, right? Like, none of us are going to go through life without having seasons like that, right? Where we're maybe unhappy or just not at peace or rest in the season that we're in. Or maybe we feel like it is kind of a waiting season. Like, there are aspects of life that we're waiting on to see that come to fruition in our lives. And so from that experience, and probably many others that you've walked through in your life, how do we kind of, in those seasons of unrest or waiting, really pursue devotion to God in that season?
Well, maybe not always like the miserable Psalms, but I think always coming back to God's word. Because that's his words to us that reveals his character. And if he is our constant, then we need to be connected to his word on an ongoing basis. We can't let that slide, because our emotions lie to us. Culture lies to us. And so we need to be constantly refilling ourselves with truth if we're going to commit to this path and stick on it.
Yeah, that's good. And I think of, even just from hearing the story you just shared, like, finding that purpose, right? Like, it finally was less miserable and more, purposeful when you realized what God was doing, right? That it was bigger than what you saw physically in that scenario. And so then that changes everything, right? Like when we're on mission and we have, like any good organization is going to have a mission statement and they're going to have core values. So it's like, what are those for you? And they're going to change from season to season, right? Like your core values and your mission in that season. And maybe you, like for me, like in certain seasons, I've had to literally write out a sentence of like, this is God's, like I've determined that this is God's purpose for me in this season, or one of the many purposes that I can see and that he's kind of brought to my attention. And so this is what I'm going to hold on to. And in those moments when I'm having a rough day or, a rough week or whatever it might be, I can remind myself of that. Yeah. And it's great when they're rooted in scripture, right? Because we know that all things God does is that's what he has for us, right? And so really having that to remind ourselves, because like you said, emotions lie to us. And so when we're having a rough day, it's like, I'm going to quit this job, or I'm going to, run away, and I'm going to change everything and take back control. Yeah. Right. And so having those truths to remind us of when we go there, which is going to happen. Yeah. So that's so good. As we've kind of been talking about devotion and just like sticking through hard seasons and just being intentional in that way, I think of commitment, right? Mm-hmm. Because this is commitment, right? We're committed to the Lord. That's what devotion is commitment to God and to his plan and to him being in control of our lives. But I think now more than ever, but it's always been a problem, commitment is hard for our culture and our society, and it's become very unpopular, right? Like in relationships, commitment is not popular. In just longevity, like longevity is not normal in our culture anymore, right? Like people are just bouncing around from thing to thing and person to person, and that's just such a common thing in our society. And so with that being a struggle, why is it important for us as Christ followers to represent what commitment is?
Yeah, we want to be people who keep our word. Like God's a God who keeps his words. We're trying to be like him. Mm-hmm. And Matthew 5:37, I jotted it down because it came to mind, but like, let your yes be yes and your no be no. Like you want to say what you mean and follow through on it. And can I just like vent for a second here? Like RSVP culture, right? Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of work that goes into things when people are planning for you or whatever. And so like a simple, are you coming? Like, just check your calendar. Yeah. Check your calendar. I mean, that's what I have to do. And if I'm busy, like, life happens. People get that. Yeah. But when you're invited, like, look at it, kind of figure out if you can or can't, and then just stick to that. Like, put it in your calendar right there, and then have the respect to, if something else that sounds super fun comes up, to just say, like, I already have plans. I have a commitment. Yeah. And when's another time we could do this? Because I think people respect that. Like when you explain, everybody gets that you have other plans. But it's kind of damaging to our character when we're a flake. Mm-hmm. Whether it's because you change your mind or you say you're going to be there and you don't show up, or you just never answer. Either way, like it just doesn't feel good to be on the other end of that, and that's not who I want to be. And and I think that when we do that with those small things, we're in a way, without realizing it, we're conditioning ourselves for the bigger things, whether it is serving or it's those relationships you mentioned. Being able to trust one another is an important thing. Obviously a big one is a marriage. Like I have made marriage promises and I keep my word on those promises. And if you just go through life like not being able to be a person who keeps your word, like I just feel like it's just a bad thing.
Yeah, it's bad. I mean, clearly it's bad for everyone around you, right? That's not honoring to the person if you say you'll be somewhere, or say, even if it's a one-on-one, like if I committed to get coffee with you and then an hour before we're supposed to meet up for coffee, I'm like, hey, so sorry I can't make it. Things happen, right? Like kids get sick, or, we get sick ourselves, or our car breaks down, or whatever. Like we get that there's real things there. And that's when the most honoring thing to you would be for me to reach out as soon as I'm able to and say, this is what happened. I'm so sorry that I'm not following through on our commitment, right? Like, verbalize those things, right? But if I'm able to be there, I'm going to be there, right? Because I committed that to you. I committed the time and the energy that I was going to put into that moment. And so that's honoring to you, right? But it's also for our best interest, right? Like, we're not created to be just flippant and like changing things and, you know, not following through in that way. Like, my life is going to flourish better too when I follow through with my commitments and with the things that I've set up, right? Like, doing those things. Because oftentimes I think the reason that we don't is also the problem, right? Like, the reason that we don't follow through on our commitments is because maybe there's like the anxieties or the fears or the lies of the enemy that are getting in the way of those things that we've committed to. Or it's that like fear of missing out or wanting to be in the best place. And would it like really get to the root? Maybe if this is a struggle, get to the root of, okay, why am I not honoring my commitments? What is getting in the way between me and those commitments? And maybe there's something there, right, that is preventing us from being committed.
Because, like you said, it could be those emotions, it could be those lies, and sometimes it's just lack of discipline in our lives.
Yeah.
You know?
Like, I just don't want to leave the house and get out of my pajamas.
And let's be honest, that. Like, who does? Like, like, we all do that.
Right. But, I mean, I would never show up for work if that was my priority, because, man, getting out of bed sometimes is tough. Yeah. But, yeah, we have to be, like you said, disciplined to follow through on our commitments. So, and really that, like I was saying, it does benefit our lives. It benefits everyone around us. But it's like, it is a practical thing. And so I think, you know, as we kind of wrap up our conversation today, what are some practical steps that we can take to grow in all of these things, right? To grow in commitment, to grow in contentment, even just patience, right? As we navigate all of this, like, what are some practical steps that we can take?
I think part of it is like not giving ourselves a pass when you catch yourself in a season like summer, where we get a lot more playing in or whatever. Don't give yourself a pass on those spiritual disciplines. You still should be spending time with Jesus, spending time in the Word, spending time in prayer. As part of that, you know, Thanksgiving and gratitude should be part of your regular time with the Lord. And whenever you start your day like that, or just have those moments, like maybe it's at night, I'm a night owl, but whenever you have those moments, it just does, it puts your whole attitude in alignment. And the other stuff is an outflow of that. Like, we know we're following Jesus. When we connect to Jesus, we remain in him. The other stuff is an outflow of that. Right. And so I think, like I said, as God being a God who keeps his word or whatever, if we're connected to Jesus, we'll find that these habits or things that maybe we're struggling with will, in some ways, self-correct as we grow in him. Yeah. Yeah, and just really, I think the point of all of this is to become more like Jesus, right? And so I think that is all of the things that you just shared are really pointing us to understand who God is better, and then formulating our lives off of that, right? That we're basing our lives off of who God is, who he's created us to be. And everything that he, you know, all of this is based on what we see in Scripture, right? And the principles that God has given us. We're not just coming up with random, like, you should do this will make your life better. But this is, you know, God's design for our lives and relationships to one another and relationships to the world around us. And so I think just really leaning into those things and understanding that it is to make our lives better, right? And it is for a reason and for a purpose. And so none of this, you know, to speak to the person that's in that waiting season, or to speak to the person that is struggling and the season that you're in, maybe you're just like dreading that it's continuing, right? You're like, Lord, get me out of this season. And God will provide for all the things that you're praying for. It probably won't look like exactly what you think it will, but God does provide for us, right? And so just trusting him, lean into God, lean in and depend on him for all the things that you're walking through. And then give him the praise for the good things, right? And allow yourself to see that, right? Because it's not often that we experience a season where there's not at least one thing that we can look at as the positive, like the thing that I'm so grateful that I have in that season. And so lean into God and allow him to shape us, because that is what it is, shape us to become more like him. And so I think we're all going to be better off because of it. So
praise God for it, right? Yeah, awesome. Well, I'm sad. This is the last episode of season 1, and it's coming to an end. Yeah. But I'm super excited. We have some super cool things in store for season 2 this fall. So make sure you like the episodes, share them with your friends, get them plugged in so that they don't miss season 2. It's going to be awesome. And Pastor Leah, you will be back for season 2. You don't know that yet, but you will be back. You're on the schedule. So thank you guys so much for joining us. And remember, we're not just talking about the kingdom. We're going to go out and be the kingdom. So have a great week, and we'll see you on Sunday.
Welcome, Soundline Church. This is Pastor Sean with the parenting tip of the week. And today, this is something that God is dealing with me in my heart, and I'd like to talk about the subject of prayer. Prayer is a powerful thing. We hear many times how prayer precedes the miracle. And so I would just challenge you, how do you incorporate your kids in the prayer life of your home and your family? And so here's the thing: mealtime prayers. Mealtime prayers can they can be rote, they can be memorized, they can be those things. I would just challenge every parent. I'm not saying pray long enough for the food to get cold, but to add some element that is different, so it's not just a repeated phrase, so the kids can tell that you're really interacting with God and the thankfulness for His provision. Bedtime prayers. Wow. I tell you what, if you make time and create space for kids to engage in bedtime prayers, I think this is one of the greatest opportunities for you to know really what is going on in their heart and mind. And so create space for bedtime prayers. And then prayer requests. I would have somewhere in my home, we had this as with my kids, where we would write down prayer requests. We would write them down, and I don't know, it made it more formal, right? And it formalized that this was important because we wrote it down. But also, we could go back and I could flip through that book, that little notepad, and I could see the things that we had written down, and then I could show them that we had prayed about this a week earlier and that God had provided and answered our prayer. So it provides a great reference point. And then God taught us how to pray. Jesus made a model for prayer in Matthew chapter 6, 9 through 13, and it says this: "Pray like this: Our Father in heaven, may your name be kept holy. May your kingdom come. May your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today the food we need, and forgive us our sins as we have forgiven those who sin against us. And don't let us yield to temptation, but rescue us from the evil one." It's a simple prayer. That's the Lord's Prayer, right? So it's there as a model. And I would just encourage you to develop a prayer system in your home. And it doesn't have to be long. It needs to be consistent. So it needs to happen frequently. And I think it's important that we just sometimes, as a parent, even in our home, to just say a prayer out loud as we go through the day. You know, if you're having a tough moment, go, "God, I need your peace. Would you help me? I need to sense your presence. Would you direct me so that I know what are the things that are important and what things that I should let slide by?" And to say that out loud in front of your kids models a heart that they can pray at any time about anything. And you'll be surprised because God answers prayers.